Before I begin, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and comment below if you love mysterious family stories, because what I'm about to tell you will chill you to the bone. Have you ever been inside a house that felt alive, like it was breathing around you, watching your every move? My grandma lived in such a place, and it's the reason she could never sleep. I first visited her Victorian house when I was 17. It stood at the end of a winding country lane, surrounded by trees whose twisted branches clawed at the sky. The paint on the walls had faded to a soft grey, peeling at the corners, and the garden was wild and overgrown, like no one had tended to it for decades. The windows reflected sunlight in odd angles, sometimes blindingly bright, sometimes casting shadows that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. I remember thinking, at the time, that it was beautiful, even charming, but the longer I stayed, the more I realized the house had a personality of its own, and it wasn't friendly. Grandma greeted me at the door, her frail frame almost swallowed by a long faded cardigan. Her eyes, which I had always remembered as bright and mischievous, were duller now, clouded with something I couldn't immediately identify: anxiety, fatigue, or something far stranger. She smiled when she saw me, but the corners of her mouth trembled, like she was trying to hold back a storm inside. "Welcome, dear," she said softly. "I'm glad you're here. I need your help." I laughed nervously, assuming she simply missed me and wanted company. But the tremor in her voice, the way she avoided my gaze, made me pause. There was a heaviness in her words, like she was carrying a secret too heavy to bear alone. That first night, I stayed in the guest room. It was quaint, filled with old furniture, each piece polished yet scarred by age, and shelves lined with books whose spines were cracked and faded. The air smelled of cedar and old paper, and the silence was almost deafening. As night fell, the house transformed. It creaked, groaned, and whispered in ways that sounded unnervingly human. Around midnight, I heard soft footsteps padding down the hallway. My heart jumped. I told myself it was Grandma moving about, but when I opened the door, the hall was empty. Shadows stretched and flickered on the walls, twisting unnaturally. I stepped out, hesitant, and the air felt colder than it should have, like it was pressing against my skin. Then came the whispers, barely audible, just beyond comprehension. They drifted from the walls, curling around me like smoke. My curiosity outweighed my fear, and I found myself following them toward the attic. Grandma's words echoed in my mind. "I haven't slept properly in months. Something keeps me awake." The attic door was old and heavy, its wood warped by decades of weather. Normally it was locked, but tonight the key hung on a nail nearby. Grandma rarely let anyone inside, insisting it was full of nothing but dust and old memories. As I climbed the stairs, each step groaned beneath me, and I felt the house watching, waiting, like a predator circling its prey. The air grew thicker, carrying the scent of cedar and dust, and moonlight streamed through a cracked window, illuminating piles of forgotten furniture, trunks, and boxes stacked haphazardly. In the far corner, a small wooden box caught my eye. Unlike everything else in the attic, it was well kept, carved with delicate patterns that seemed almost alive in the moonlight. Something compelled me to open it. Inside were letters, tied with a faded ribbon, yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant, delicate, unmistakably feminine. My breath caught when I saw the name at the bottom. My great-grandmother, Grandma's mother. I called Grandma into the attic. Her hands trembled as she read each letter. They spoke of fear, of being watched, of hidden doors, secret compartments, and a promise to protect something mysterious inside the house. Her voice quivered as she whispered, I never knew this. All these years, I've lived with their shadows. And right here, if your heart is racing and your skin is crawling, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. because what we found next will shock you. We descended the attic stairs carefully, the wood groaning beneath our feet. The house seemed to exhale around us, creaking and settling as if it were alive. Shadows shifted in corners, and I felt unseen eyes brushing against my skin. Grandma paused at the base of the stairs, pressing a hand to her chest. "I've never gone into the basement at night," she admitted, voice tight. "I've always been too afraid." But tonight, fear wouldn't stop her. She led the way to the basement door, a slab of old wood with iron hinges, scarred by decades of neglect. The key turned with surprising ease, and the door creaked open, releasing a musty, damp odor that made my stomach churn. I turned to the camera, imagining all of you watching. If you're getting goosebumps already, make sure to like, share this video with a friend who loves mysteries, and subscribe, because we are about to uncover something incredible. The basement was darker than I expected. A tiny window barely let in any moonlight, and the beams from our flashlights revealed stacks of crates, furniture, and old trunks. In the center of the floor, a patch of wood looked newer than the rest, with faint edges suggesting it could be lifted. My pulse raced. Grandma knelt beside it, trembling, tracing the edges with her fingers. This had to be the hidden compartment mentioned in the letters. Her eyes met mine, wide with fear and determination. I've spent years wondering what she was hiding, and why. Tonight, we find out. I held my breath as she pried at the edges. The board shifted, revealing a small cavity beneath the floor. Inside lay a wooden box, smaller than the one in the attic, but heavier, carved with intricate symbols we didn't recognize. The air grew dense, almost electric, and I felt as if the house itself were aware of our discovery. If you're watching this, make sure to pause and subscribe now, and hit the like button, because the moment we open this box, everything changes. Grandma lifted the lid slowly, as if expecting it to bite. Inside were more letters, a leather-bound journal, and several faded photographs. One photo stopped me cold. It showed my great-grandmother standing in the house, but in the background, a shadowy figure lurked, impossibly still, almost translucent. Grandma gasped. I remember her telling me about him," she whispered. "I never believed her, but now I see. He's been here all along." The whispers grew louder, forming almost coherent words that brushed past my ears. I could feel the weight of decades pressing down on us, the house alive with secrets and regrets. Grandma's eyes welled with tears. "I thought I was protecting you all, but maybe I was only protecting myself." The basement grew colder, the shadows pressing closer, as if impatient for the secrets we were about to uncover. If you're still with me, like, comment, and share this video, because the next part will reveal the journal's secrets, the shadow's identity, and why this house never lets Grandma sleep. We had crossed the threshold. The house had opened its doors, and it wanted us to see everything hidden within. Grandma clutched my hand, trembling, whispering, "We're not alone!" And now we know why I never sleep. Grandma's hand felt impossibly small in mine, and yet there was a resolve in her grip that belied her frailty. The air in the basement was thick, cold, and musty, each breath carrying the scent of damp earth, old wood, and something faintly metallic, like the residue of decades-old secrets. I shivered, not only from the cold, but from the realization that we were standing in a place where generations had hidden truths that were never meant to be uncovered. The whispers had not stopped. They circled around us, weaving through the air like invisible threads, sometimes brushing my ears with soft, unintelligible syllables, sometimes murmuring in a voice so familiar that I almost recognized it. It was impossible to tell whether it was the house speaking or the memories of those who had lived and died within its walls. Grandma took a deep breath and opened the leather-bound journal carefully. The cover was worn and the edges of the pages were frayed, but the words inside were still clear. The handwriting was the same delicate script we had seen in the letters, a mixture of elegance and urgency. "These are her true confessions," Grandma whispered, her voice almost breaking. Everything she was too afraid to say out loud. She began reading, and I listened, barely daring to breathe, as the story of my great-grandmother unfolded before me. It started with love, an impossible love, constrained by the social rules of the time, full of longing and secrecy. Then it moved into fear of a man who had been obsessed, watching, following, controlling. He was never named directly, only referred to as the Shadow. My great-grandmother had been hiding him, protecting the family, keeping the house itself a kind of barrier against his presence. Every night she wrote about hearing footsteps, feeling eyes on her, whispers in empty rooms. The similarities to my own experiences in this house were chilling. Grandma glanced at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and understanding. "I never knew," she said. "I thought it was just my imagination. All these years, I blame myself." The journal described a hidden compartment in the attic, one we hadn't yet explored, containing objects of power and significance, each designed to protect the family from the Shadow's influence. My heart raced as I realized the box in the basement was only part of the story. The attic held the rest, a collection of artifacts, letters, and memories, meant to shield generations from a darkness that had never truly left. I turn to you, watching this unfold. If your pulse is racing and you're hooked by this mystery, pause for a moment to like, comment, and subscribe, because what comes next will reveal the heart of the house's secret and why Grandma has never slept a full night in her life. We decided to return to the attic, carrying the box and journal with us. The stairs groaned under our weight, each creak a warning. Moonlight streamed through the cracked window, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny specters in the air. Every shadow seemed alive, shifting unnaturally, as if trying to communicate something, to guide us toward truths we weren't fully prepared to face. When we reached the corner where the previous box had been, there was a section of floorboards we hadn't lifted before. According to the journal, it contained items of great importance, objects that could reveal the identity of the Shadow, and perhaps even banish its presence from the house permanently. Grandma knelt beside the boards, hands trembling. I could see her fingers shake as she pried at the edges. The floorboards resisted at first, creaking and groaning, but eventually gave way, revealing a narrow cavity beneath. Inside were several small objects: a carved wooden amulet, a bundle of dried herbs, an old locket, and a stack of letters tied together with a black ribbon. The amulet glimmered faintly in the moonlight, as if it carried its own inner light. Grandma picked it up with reverent care. "This," she said softly, "was meant to protect us all these years." The whispers in the attic intensified. They were no longer soft. They were almost urgent, circling us, speaking in tones that were just on the edge of comprehension. I could feel a tingling sensation across my skin, a mixture of fear and awe, as if the house itself recognized the significance of what we had found. Every object, every letter, every line in the journal was a piece of a puzzle that had spanned generations. The house had been a protector, a prison, and a witness all at once. As we carefully examined the items, Grandma's eyes fell on the locket. She opened it, revealing a tiny photograph of my great-grandmother, and behind her, a figure shrouded in shadow. It was the same figure I had seen in the photograph from the basement. Grandma gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. He never left," she whispered. "He's been here this whole time, in some way, watching us, waiting." My own fear surged. The thought that this shadow, this malevolent presence, had been tied to our family for decades was almost too much to comprehend. We turned to the journal again, reading the passages that described how the amulet and locket had been used to create a protective barrier, a sort of talismanic ward against the shadow's influence. According to the entries, only those who understood the history and performed the necessary rituals could maintain its protective power. Grandma looked at me, her eyes glistening. "We have to do it. We have no choice. If we don't, this house, it will never let me sleep. And neither will you." I nodded, though I felt my stomach twist with anxiety. The thought of confronting a presence that had haunted our family for decades, that had been part of the house itself, was terrifying. Yet there was also a strange sense of destiny, as if we had been drawn here not by curiosity, but by necessity. The house had chosen us to uncover its secrets and protect its legacy. And right here, if you're still with me and your heart is pounding, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because the next steps will reveal the first true interaction with the shadow and the emotional revelations Grandma has hidden for her entire life. You won't want to miss it. Grandma guided me through the attic, placing the objects on the floor in a precise pattern described in the journal. As we followed the instructions, chanting words recorded in the margins, a cold wind swept through the room. Shadows flickered along the walls, twisting and moving, as if the house itself was alive and aware of our actions. The amulet began to glow faintly, casting a soft light across the attic. And for the first time, I felt a sense of purpose amidst the fear. We completed the ritual, and for a moment, everything seemed to hold its breath. Then the whispers faded, the shadows retreated, and the house was silent once more. Grandma collapsed into a chair, exhausted but relieved. It's done," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "For the first time in decades, I can rest. I can finally sleep." I looked around the attic, the glow of the amulet casting soft, comforting light, and realized that this house, with all its creaks and whispers, had been protecting our family, guiding us, and testing us for generations. And now, we understood it. If you've followed this story and felt your own heart racing, make sure to like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe, because the next part will take you deeper into the history of this house, uncovering secrets that not even Grandma knew existed. The shadow is still out there, waiting, and the story is far from over. We carefully gathered the items and returned them to the hidden compartment, ensuring everything was just as it had been described in the journal. As we left the attic and descended the stairs, a sense of calm washed over us. The house, which had felt alive and menacing before, now seemed almost peaceful. For the first time, I understood why Grandma had stayed awake all those years. It wasn't just the house. It was the weight of family secrets, the shadows of generations, and the responsibility to protect what had been left behind. And so, as I lay in bed that night, listening to the gentle groans of the old house, I realized that some places, some families, carry histories too powerful to ignore. And some nights, the ghosts of the past aren't just stories. They're very real. If you're ready to uncover the next chapter, where the shadow's presence is revealed and the family's emotional secrets come to light, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. You won't believe what happens next. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below if you're ready to follow me through this chilling family mystery. Because what comes next is far stranger than anything we've seen so far. After the ritual in the attic, Grandma slept for the first time in decades, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't finished with us yet. That night, as I lay awake listening to the faint groans and sighs of the Victorian structure, I felt an almost tangible tension, like the house itself was waiting, watching, preparing for what was to come. The journal we had found wasn't just a collection of memories. It was a roadmap, a guide to understanding the shadow that had haunted our family for generations. Every page was filled with warnings, cryptic symbols, and meticulous instructions, written in the elegant hand of my great-grandmother, who had clearly lived in fear, but had also shown remarkable courage. The next morning, Grandma and I returned to the attic, determined to uncover more. The journal had hinted at a room we had never entered, a space behind the bookshelf in the study, concealed for decades. As we approached, I noticed the subtle wear on the carpet near the wall, a faint indentation that suggested the bookshelf had been moved often. With some effort, Grandma pushed aside the heavy furniture, revealing a narrow door, barely taller than her, set into the wall like a secret entrance. The air that escaped from the crack was musty and cold, carrying with it the scent of old books, cedar, and something else I couldn't name. A metallic tang, sharp and unsettling. I turned to the camera, or rather, imagined all of you following this journey, and whispered, "If you're getting chills right now, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because the secrets behind this door will shock you, and you won't believe what we found inside." We stepped inside together. The room was small, more of a closet than anything else, lined with shelves that held dozens of journals, letters, and strange objects, each meticulously labeled and organized. It was a hidden archive of a life I had never known existed, a life lived in constant vigilance against a presence that seemed to reach through time. Grandma picked up one of the journals, its leather cover cracked and worn, and opened it. The handwriting was hers, but older, more deliberate, each word weighed with the gravity of decades of fear and protection. The entries described encounters with the shadow, its movements within the house, and the measures taken to keep it at bay. My great-grandmother had used the objects we discovered, the amulet, locket, and various herbs, not just as protective talismans, but as keys to understanding the entity. There were sketches, diagrams, and meticulous notes detailing how to perform rituals, how to sense the shadow's presence, and how to ensure it could not harm the family. Each entry sent shivers down my spine. It was clear that this house had been a battlefield, a silent war waged against something we could not see, but could feel in every corner, in every floorboard, in every shadow. Grandma turned to me, her eyes wide with fear and something else. Determination. "I've carried this with me all my life, even when I didn't know what it was," she said, her voice shaking. "This shadow, it's more than a memory, more than a story. It's real, and it's been waiting for us to be ready." The air in the hidden room felt heavier, charged, like static electricity, and I could almost hear the faint whispers again, curling around us, urging us onward. The journals mentioned a specific event, a night decades ago, when the shadow had almost breached the protective measures, and only the quick thinking of my great-grandmother had prevented disaster. Reading her words, I felt the tension of that moment, the fear and urgency, as if I were reliving history through her eyes. If you're still with me, pause and hit that like button, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts, because what we're about to uncover will take this story to a whole new level of mystery and suspense. Grandma led me to a shelf with a small brass key tied to a ribbon, labeled simply, "The Heart of the Shadow." Her hands trembled as she held it. According to the journals, this key opened a locked compartment within the walls of the study, where my great-grandmother had hidden an object that contained the essence of the shadow, a kind of anchor, keeping it tethered to the house, but preventing it from causing harm. It was both a prison and a safeguard, and it had been our family's burden to maintain it. We found the hidden compartment, a small square cavity in the wall, its edges worn and smoothed by decades of use. Grandma inserted the key and turned it slowly, and the compartment opened with a soft click. Inside was a small obsidian orb, polished to a deep, reflective black, almost like liquid shadow, trapped in solid form. The moment we touched it, A chill ran through the room, and the whispers rose, urgent, almost frantic, swirling around us. The journal had warned us. The orb should only be handled with care and with full understanding of its power, or it could awaken the shadow fully. I looked at Grandma, and her expression was resolute. "We're ready," she said. "We've studied the journals. We know the rituals. We have to face this, or it will never leave us." My heart pounded. I had imagined this moment countless times since discovering the letters, and now it was real. The shadow was no longer a distant presence. It was here, in our hands, waiting. The journal described the first step, placing the orb on a specially prepared altar in the center of the attic, surrounding it with protective herbs, candles, and the amulet we had discovered. Grandma directed me to arrange everything precisely as instructed, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. As we completed the ritual setup, the temperature in the room dropped, our breath visible in the faint light of the candles. The shadows on the walls began to stretch and writhe, moving as if alive, and the whispers coalesced into a low, guttural hum that resonated deep in my chest. At that moment, I realized the gravity of what we were doing. The house had been waiting for us, preparing us for this confrontation. The shadow wasn't just a story. It was a legacy, a presence that had shaped every decision, every fear, every sleepless night in this home. Grandma and I stood together, holding hands over the orb, reciting the words from the journal, our voices trembling but determined. And right here, if your heart is racing and your mind is spinning, hit that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe, because the next part will reveal the shadow's first manifestation, the emotional truths it uncovers, and why this house has held our family captive in fear for generations. You won't want to miss a second of it. The hum grew louder, almost deafening now, and the shadows coalesced into a shape, a vague, shifting figure that seemed both human and inhuman. Flickering at the edges of perception, Grandma tightened her grip on my hand. "It's him," she whispered. "It's the one who's haunted us all these years." My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I had expected something terrifying, but this was beyond what I had imagined. The shadow seemed aware, intelligent, and reactive, its movements deliberate. The room felt alive with tension. Each breath we took charged with fear and anticipation. We continued the ritual, our voices steadying as we followed the instructions. The orb pulsed faintly, the light shifting like liquid darkness within. The whispers softened, almost as if listening, observing, waiting for the next move. And then, Grandma spoke, revealing a truth I hadn't anticipated. This shadow, it's connected to our emotions, our memories. It feeds on fear, on regret, on guilt. To truly banish it, or at least control it, we must confront the truths we've buried within ourselves. I realized in that moment that this wasn't just about a haunting or a mysterious presence in the house. It was about our family, our history, and the weight of generations. The house had been a silent witness, the shadow a manifestation of unspoken secrets, and now we were forced to face them head-on. The moment Grandma and I completed the ritual, the room seemed to hold its breath. The shadows on the walls shivered and stretched, then slowly began to settle, like waves returning to a calm sea. But I could still feel it, the presence, the weight of the shadow lingering near us, almost tangible, pressing against the edges of the attic. Grandma clutched the orb in her hands, her face pale but resolute. "It's not gone," she whispered. "It's waiting, watching, but it won't harm us if we stay true to the ritual." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. "So, it's like it's alive?" I asked, voice trembling. Grandma nodded. "It's more than alive. It's connected to us, to our family. It's a reflection of our fear, our regrets, the things we've hidden and ignored." Her words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a living memory, a dark echo of our family's past. I remembered the photograph from the basement, the one showing my great-grandmother, with that figure lurking behind her. Now, seeing the shadow here, I understood. It had always been part of the house, part of our bloodline, a presence we couldn't ignore. And the journal had been our guide, passed down as a warning, a set of instructions to keep it contained. Grandma, I said softly, how did you survive all these years without knowing the full story? She sighed, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't survive. I just endured. Every night, every shadow, every whisper. I carried it with me. I was too afraid to uncover the truth. But now you're here. You're part of this. And maybe we can finally end it. Or at least make it rest. If you're following this story and feeling the suspense, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because the next part will reveal the shadow's first emotional interaction with us, and some truths that Grandma has kept hidden her entire life. We place the orb on the altar as instructed, surrounding it with the protective herbs and the amulet. The shadows around us shifted, and I could almost hear a soft sigh, like the house itself acknowledging our actions. Then the whispers coalesced into words, soft, barely audible, but unmistakable. Release, remember, forgive. Grandma's eyes widened. It's trying to communicate, she said. It's not just a shadow. It's the emotions, the memories, the regrets of our family. It's asking us to face them, to acknowledge them, or it will never leave. I felt a wave of fear and understanding wash over me. The shadow wasn't malevolent in the traditional sense. It wasn't trying to harm us. It was a mirror, reflecting everything we had suppressed, all the secrets we hadn't confronted, all the guilt and sorrow that had accumulated over generations. Grandma, I said, voice shaking, what if it's too much? What if we can't face it? She smiled faintly, a mixture of sorrow and strength. Then it will stay with the house, and we'll continue the cycle. But we can face it. We have the knowledge, we have the journal, and now we have each other. As we held hands over the orb, the shadows began to stabilize, shifting more fluidly, almost peacefully. The whispers grew softer, like distant echoes, guiding us instead of frightening us. For the first time, I felt a strange connection to the house, to its history, and to the shadow itself. It wasn't just darkness. It was memory, emotion, and a presence that demanded respect. And right here, if your heart is racing and you're hooked by this story, pause, like this video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe, because the next part will take us to the first confrontation, where the shadow reveals a truth that will change everything. We thought we knew about our family. Grandma and I carefully placed their items back in the compartment, ensuring the orb and amulet were secure. The shadows in the attic seemed to retreat, folding into the corners, leaving only a soft glow from the orb. Grandma's face relaxed slightly. It's a small victory, she said, but enough to know that we're on the right path. The house, the shadow, they're part of us now, and we have to honor that, or nothing will change. We left the attic that night, exhausted but determined. The house had shown us the first piece of the truth. The shadow had made itself known, and the journal had guided us through our first steps toward understanding. But I knew this was just the beginning. The real test, the confrontation with our deepest fears, our hidden regrets, and the full truth of the shadow was yet to come. The night after the ritual, the house felt quieter, almost watchful. I lay awake, listening to the creaks of the wooden beams, every sound magnified in the silence. Grandma had fallen asleep in her chair downstairs, but even in her rest, she looked uneasy, as if the weight of the shadow still pressed on her chest. I couldn't stop replaying the whispers in my head. Release, remember, forgive. Those words lingered like smoke in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were meant for us. Not just for Grandma, but for me too. The orb still glowed faintly in the attic, and the shadows seemed to breathe with it. Alive, waiting. Around midnight, I heard it. A voice, clearer than before, seeping through the walls like a cold draft. "Do you see me?" it asked. My heart pounded, and I sat up, staring at the corner of my room. The darkness there thickened, pulsing like a heartbeat. For the first time, I saw a shape. Not just a shadow, but a figure. Tall, indistinct, with eyes that seemed to shimmer faintly in the dark. "Grandma!" I whispered sharply, but my voice barely carried. She stirred downstairs, and within moments she was at my door, her face pale. "You saw it too," she said before I could speak. I nodded, my throat dry. The figure hadn't vanished. It lingered, its gaze fixed on us, as if studying, waiting. Grandma clutched my hand. "It's testing us," she whispered. "It wants to see if we'll run, or face it." My instinct screamed to flee, but something about its presence held me rooted in place. It didn't feel like pure malice. It felt heavy, sorrowful, like it carried stories it couldn't tell. We lit the candle and held the amulet between us. The shadow stirred, wavering, and for the briefest moment, I thought I heard it weep. The sound pierced my heart, soft, broken, like the cry of someone long forgotten. Grandma's hand trembled in mine. "It's a memory," she whispered. "A memory trapped in the walls of this house." If this story has you hooked right now, please hit subscribe, drop a like, and share it with someone who loves mysteries. Your support helps us keep uncovering secrets like this one. The figure retreated slowly into the corner, melting back into the darkness. But I knew this wasn't over. It hadn't come to harm us. It had come to show us, to remind us of something buried deep in our family's past. Grandma sat heavily on the edge of my bed. "When I was your age," she said softly, "I saw it too, but I was too afraid to listen. I ran, and I carried that fear all my life. Maybe now it's giving us a chance to listen." Her eyes glistened with tears, and in that moment, I realized the shadow wasn't just part of the house. It was part of her. It had haunted her for decades, and now it had chosen to reveal itself to both of us. This wasn't just her battle anymore. It was ours. I glanced at the corner where the figure had vanished and whispered into the silence, "We see you." The air shifted, lighter somehow, as if the house had exhaled. The shadows relaxed against the walls, no longer pressing in so heavily. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was something close. A truce. Grandma reached for my hand again, squeezing gently. "This is only the beginning," she said. "Tomorrow the house will show us more, and we need to be ready." The following evening, the house felt heavier than before, as if it knew we had acknowledged the shadow. Every floorboard groaned under our feet, and the air carried a faint, metallic scent, like rust or old blood. Grandma and I sat in the parlor, the journal open between us. The flickering candlelight cast restless shapes across the walls, and I couldn't help but wonder if they were watching us, or if the shadow itself lingered in every corner. Grandma traced her fingers over a page marked with faded ink. "At this entry," she said, her voice tight, "was written by my mother. She wrote that the shadow came to her too. It begged her to remember, but she never spoke of what it meant." Her eyes flicked up to mine. I think she carried something she couldn't bear to say out loud. The thought chilled me. If the shadow carried the weight of family secrets, then what kind of truth had been buried for so long that it haunted generations? Suddenly, a soft knock echoed from the walls. Not the door, inside the walls. 3 taps, deliberate, as if someone were trapped within. I froze, and Grandma's hand went rigid in mine. The knock came again, closer this time, followed by a whisper so faint it felt like breath against my ear. "Downstairs!" "Basemore." Grandma's face drained of color. "It wants us to go there." My stomach knotted. The basement was where I'd found the photograph. the place where the air always felt colder, heavier. It had been calling us all along. We lit 2 lanterns and descended the narrow steps. The deeper we went, the colder it grew, until our breath came out in faint clouds. The basement smelled of damp earth and old stone. The moment we stepped off the stairs, the lanterns flickered wildly, shadows darting across the walls like restless spirits. In the far corner, the same wooden trunk sat waiting, the one that had held the photograph. But now, something was different. The lid was slightly ajar, and inside, I could see faint glimmers of light, as if something pulsed within. Grandma's voice shook. "It's showing us what it hid." She knelt and slowly lifted the lid. Inside lay another journal, older, its leather cover cracked and brittle. Alongside it rested a lock of hair, tied with a faded ribbon, and a locket that looked tarnished with age. The second Grandma touched the locket, the basement walls seemed to sigh, and the shadows stretched across the floor, pooling around us like dark water. Its voice filled the air, clear this time, mournful. "Remember me." Grandma's hands trembled as she opened the locket. Inside was a tiny faded photograph of a young woman, her face eerily similar to Grandma's own. "My grandmother," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. I never knew she was connected to this. The shadow loomed higher, surrounding us, not threatening, but pleading. I felt a strange sadness press against my chest, like someone else's grief sinking into my heart. This wasn't just about fear. It was about loss, about something that had been hidden away too long. If you're feeling this story and want to see what truth we uncover next, please like this video, subscribe, and comment your theories. Your support means everything as we dive deeper into the mystery. The journal in the trunk felt alive, as if the leather itself pulsed with memory. Grandma clutched it tightly, her eyes wet. "She wanted us to find this," she whispered. "She wanted us to know." The shadow lingered close, its shape wavering like smoke, and I swear I saw it bow its head, as if waiting for us to finally open the pages and confront what generations had refused to face. I glanced at Grandma. "Are you ready?" She nodded, though fear lined her face. Together, we lifted the journal, its pages crumbling but legible, and as we opened it, the shadow bent nearer, breathing with us. The words inside were written in a hurried, desperate hand, and as Grandma read aloud the first lines, her voice faltered. Whatever story this journal held, it was the key, the truth the shadow demanded we remember. And just before we turned the page, the whisper came again, this time with a trembling ache that filled the entire room. "Forgive." The pages of the old journal trembled in Grandma's hands, as if the leather itself resisted being opened. Dust drifted into the lantern light, and the silence of the basement pressed on us so heavily that even breathing felt loud. I leaned closer, my heart pounding, as she finally began to read. "My name is Eliza," she whispered, her voice cracking, "and this house holds my shame." The words cut through the air like a knife. Eliza, Grandma's grandmother, the woman in the locket. Her handwriting was frantic, uneven, as though each letter had been carved in desperation. The journal told of nights filled with restless whispers, of shadows crawling across her bedroom walls, and of a secret that had festered in her heart. She wrote of a man, someone forbidden, someone she had loved against the wishes of her family. Their love had ended in tragedy, and the child she carried had been hidden, erased from memory, erased from the family's name. Grandma's lips trembled as she read aloud, "I buried the truth in this house. I buried my sorrow, my anger, my grief, and the shadow became my companion. It took shape in the darkness, carrying the weight of what I could not confess." I felt my chest tighten. The shadow wasn't just a haunting. It was born from heartbreak, from a secret buried alive. It wasn't evil. It was grief, crystallized into something that refused to be forgotten. The walls of the basement seemed to lean closer, the lanterns flickering. The shadow thickened, swirling around us, and for the first time, I saw a face within it, blurred, distorted, but unmistakably human. A man's face. His eyes were pools of sorrow, searching, pleading. Grandma pressed her palm to her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She never told me," she whispered. "All these years, she carried it alone." Her voice broke, and I carried her shadow without ever knowing why. The figure in the dark reached forward, not menacingly, but gently, as if wanting to be acknowledged. My hand shook, but I found myself raising it toward the shadow, and as I did, the air around me grew warmer, softer. For a heartbeat, I felt his pain, centuries of longing, silenced love, and the ache of being forgotten. If your heart is racing right now, pause and hit subscribe. Drop a like and comment what you think Eliza's secret means for the family. Your support helps us continue sharing stories like this. The shadow pulled back slightly, circling us like a guardian, bound by chains. The journal's final lines were smudged, but clear enough to make my skin crawl. To free this house, someone must remember. Someone must speak my truth aloud. Only then will the shadow rest. Grandma's hands trembled as she closed the journal. "It's not just asking us to remember," she whispered. "It's asking us to forgive her choices, her pain, and maybe even ourselves, for carrying her burden so long." I glanced at the corner where the shadow lingered, its face dissolving into smoke once more. My voice cracked as I whispered, "We remember you. We see you." The shadow shifted, flickering like a flame in the wind. And for the first time, I thought I saw a flicker of peace in its shape. But the air remained heavy, and I knew this wasn't finished. The house wanted more. It wanted us to relive what had been hidden. Grandma wiped her tears, determination flashing in her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said firmly, "we'll read the rest. We'll face it, no matter how painful it is. This ends with us." The lantern steadied, the basement exhaled, and the shadow dissolved back into the walls, leaving only the faint echo of a sigh. But even as we climbed the stairs, I could feel it, watching, waiting, and hoping we would be strong enough to finish what Eliza had begun. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the man's face in the shadow. His sorrowful eyes, his pleading expression, the weight of his unfinished story pressing against my chest. The words from Eliza's journal echoed in my head like a curse. Someone must speak my truth aloud. The house groaned and shifted around me. Somewhere in the distance, a door creaked open by itself. The air carried a faint humming, low and mournful, like a lullaby sung through broken walls. I sat up in bed, heart hammering, and whispered, "I hear you." The shadows thickened instantly, rising from the corners of my room until they gathered at the foot of my bed. Grandma burst in seconds later, her face pale, clutching the journal tight against her chest. "It won't wait," she gasped. "It wants us now." Together, we lit the lantern and opened the journal to the pages we hadn't yet read. The handwriting grew more frantic, the words almost carved into the paper. I loved him. They told me I should forget, but I couldn't. They took him away, and I buried my grief in these walls. This house, it became my prison, and my heart became the shadow. Grandma's voice cracked as she read. She wasn't haunted. She created it. Her pain gave it form. Tears streaked her cheeks, and we've all been carrying it ever since. The figure formed again, taller, clearer this time, its shape shimmering in the dim light. It reached a hand toward Grandma, its voice a broken whisper. "Speak it. Let me rest." Grandma clutched my hand, trembling. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. But then, with a trembling breath, she lifted her chin and spoke into the dark. Eliza loved a man she wasn't allowed to love. She lost him, and her grief became this shadow. She wanted to be remembered. She wanted to be forgiven. And tonight Tonight we forgive her. The shadow quivered, its form rippling as if struck by an unseen wind. The air grew warmer, and for a brief moment, the heaviness in the house lifted. I felt tears sting my own eyes, not just for Eliza, but for Grandma, for the years she had lived in fear, without knowing the truth. If you're feeling the emotion right now, please pause and hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment if you think forgiveness can really end this curse. Your thoughts matter more than you know. The shadow leaned closer, its face flickering between sorrow and release. For the first time, I saw it smile. Faint, fleeting, but real. Then, just as quickly, the smile dissolved into a look of despair. It wasn't done. It wanted more. Grandma gasped, clutching her chest. "It's not just about her secret," she whispered. "It's about ours. Every generation has added to this, and it won't rest until we face everything we've hidden too." The lantern flickered violently, and the journal's last page loosened, fluttering free as though torn by unseen hands. On it, scrawled in hurried ink, was one final line: "The shadow will rest only when the living confess their truth." As I confessed mine, Grandma's grip on my hand tightened. "It's asking us for something I've never been brave enough to give," she said, her eyes glistening. "It wants my truth." The shadow surged closer, surrounding us with a suffocating weight, waiting, demanding. The air vibrated with its hunger, and the house itself seemed to hold its breath. This was no longer Eliza's burden alone. It was ours. If you want to see the moment when Grandma finally faces her own secret and how the shadow reacts, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and share it. The night the shadow demanded Grandma's truth, the air in the house grew so heavy it was hard to breathe. Every candle sputtered, every corner filled with restless darkness, and the walls themselves seemed to tremble with anticipation. Grandma clutched the journal in her lap, her hands shaking, her face pale but set with a kind of weary determination. "I've carried something for years," she whispered, her voice low, breaking in the silence. "Something I swore I'd take to my grave. But maybe this house already knows. Maybe that's why it never let me sleep." The shadow thickened in front of us, forming that same sorrowful figure, its eyes gleaming with expectation. I held Grandma's hand, feeling her pulse race beneath her skin. "Whatever it is," I whispered, "you don't have to be afraid anymore. I'm here." She closed her eyes, tears spilling down her wrinkled cheeks. "When I was young, before I met your grandfather, I fell in love too, but he was married. We kept it hidden, thinking it was just a passing mistake. But it wasn't. It was real. And when I found out I was carrying his child, my family forced me to hide it. They said it would ruin us. They sent the baby away before I could even hold her." My breath caught. I had never heard this before. Grandma's voice cracked as she continued. She grew up believing she was unwanted, and I lived with the shame, never telling a soul. Every night the house reminded me of that silence. Every shadow, every whisper. It wasn't just Eliza's sorrow. It was mine too. The shadow surged, its form swelling with energy, the walls vibrating as if the house itself was weeping. For the first time, its voice was clear, layered with centuries of grief and longing. "Confess, forgive, be free." Grandma gripped my hand tighter, raising her voice, tears streaming down her face. "I loved her. I loved my daughter, though I never said it aloud. And I forgive myself for being weak, for letting others choose for me. And I forgive Eliza too, for passing her pain down through us. Tonight, it ends." The moment the words left her lips, the shadow shuddered violently, then softened, dissolving into streams of light and darkness, swirling together like smoke in the wind. For the first time since stepping into that house, I felt a weight lift, like a window had opened and let the stale air escape. The lanterns steadied. The air warmed. The figure in the shadow looked at Grandma one last time, and then it smiled, not a fleeting flicker, but a warm, grateful smile that stretched across its fading face. With a final whisper, "Thank you," it dissolved completely, leaving only the faintest shimmer in the air. The silence that followed was not heavy, but peaceful. The house sighed, its creak soft, its stillness comforting rather than suffocating. For the first time in her life, Grandma looked calm, the lines of fear on her face softening into quiet relief. She sank back into her chair, closing her eyes. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. I nodded, swallowing hard. "It's gone." We sat in that silence for a long while, hand in hand, the journal resting closed on the table. The house no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a home. The shadow had never been a curse. It had been a reminder, a plea for truth, for forgiveness, for love long denied. Grandma's voice was soft when she finally spoke again. "Maybe now I'll sleep," and she did. That night, for the first time in decades, she slept peacefully, without fear of the dark. If this story touched your heart, if the mystery kept you hooked until the end, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who loves emotional mysteries. Your support keeps stories like this alive. But remember this, every old house has its shadows. Some are just shapes in the dark. Others are the truths we're too afraid to tell.